Hey everyone, Evan here. I hope you're staying indoors, staying healthy, staying safe during these times. My presentation is on Vaughan Oliver. He is a album artwork creator. We'll show you some of his works, show you where Photoshop, Lightroom come into play with his career. And I hope you guys don't mind, but since he's obviously created some big album artworks, I will be playing music throughout this presentation just to liven it up a little bit. And I hope you enjoy. So why did I pick him? In the realm of album artworks, he is very influential. His works are very unique, and as a result of the uniqueness, he created this cultural aesthetic for the 90s through his art. But the main reason I really wanted to show him off was because in the beginning, he started his career in the 80s and the 90s through his album artwork, but he wasn't predominantly using Photoshop and Lightroom at that time as a result of, just the technology wasn't there at the time. But what I wanted to showcase was through this art form that he was able to establish with the help of Photoshop and Lightroom in the future. He makes these enhancements to his work. While they may be subtle, they at least enhance his artwork as a result, and I just wanted to showcase that you are able to do this through Photoshop and Lightroom. So to give you a perspective on his early life, he was born on September 12th, 1957. I did forget to mention this in the PowerPoint, but he did sadly pass away last year. But he was born September 12th, 1957 in England. When he was growing up, he mentions that he didn't really get that much exposure to music because his family wasn't really into a lot of cultural things at the time, but through what music he was able to listen to, he did describe it as a way for him to visually imagine these kind of artworks at an early age, which develop into this passion for graphic design and arts in general. He also mentions early on that he was heavily inspired by the works of surrealism. He named Salvador Dali, the great surrealist artist, as an influence, but he also mentions a few other pop art artists of like the 50s and 60s. Another one he mentions obviously is Andy Warhol, but I think through the artwork that I will show you, you can definitely see a heavy love for surrealism, and I think through that love you will be able to see how his art obviously isn't influenced by it, but I think through the visuals that he presents, he's obviously going to influence a lot of other artists, and as a result, you're going to have this aesthetic that does blow up into a mainstream way throughout the early to mid 90s. But putting that aside, after he graduated from high school, he went to Northumbria University for graphic design and typography, and this is where he's going to experiment with this artwork, which will obviously lead to his future gigs with album artworks. So he ends up graduating college, and he ends up designing album covers with record labels like 23 Envelope, 4AD, which these two were the big ones that he ends up working for, but he worked for a couple other ones. The importance of these record labels, specifically 4AD in this case, a lot of the bands in the 90s that like blew up into the mainstream, a lot of them were influenced by bands that were on these labels, which were seeing album covers that were created by him. So that's where I was saying where the aesthetic that he created, I think he influenced obviously through the creations of these artworks. And just for a side note, the album on the left here is Modern English. The song that it should be playing around here, the first one at least, is the big song Melt With You that blew up in the early 80s. But the one act that really defines them is the Pixies, which, for those who don't know, I'll play some of the music later on too, but their act is very surreal, very bizarre and stuff, and I think the artwork that he creates for them helps emphasize that bizarreness in their music. With the examples I'm going to show too, I just want to show off what they would look like at the time, because he doesn't have access to Photoshop and Lightroom. A lot of these creations, they have the surrealist techniques that I was mentioning, that influence that he has. But what at the time he's using a lot of like long exposure photographs, which he would add to the artwork, and a lot of typography. And he would create these like very stunning, obviously surreal, but bizarre images. And I think just that uniqueness compared to the other album covers that were around that time gave him a name within the field of album artworks. So in this slide right here, these are three of the Pixies albums that the first three of the Pixies albums that he was able to work on. And as you can see, a lot of this has to do more with like printing press and the photos he would use. He would also put the press images on top of those. And again, very surreal and very unique to his own. I think with what he was able to achieve with the technology at the time, it is obviously very stunning and impressive. But I wanted to showcase at least the first three Pixies albums that he worked on, because these were some of, I think, the defining album artwork that he was able to achieve during this time, and at least established him at that time as a groundbreaking artist in this realm. And in this slide too, here's a couple other albums that he worked on through 4 AD. You got the Breeders on the left, you have Lush in the middle, and Bush, which was a big grunge band in the mid to late 90s, on the right. And again, just kind of showing off those designs that he was known for. And again, this is through typography, long exposure, photographs. And I just really want to emphasize, well, at the time, Photoshop and Lightroom were not a part of the technology at the time. I think this is impressive to achieve, but what you'll see in the next couple of slides, once he has that technology, while it may be a little bit subtle, I think the differences in the artwork, it tends to be a little bit improved, but just something to point out. So around the early to mid 2000s, he starts making a switch from obviously the film landscape and the typography to a more digital realm when it comes to photography and the software and the technology that he's going to end up using. The amount of content, the quantity at least, that he puts out around this time isn't as high as it was back in the 80s and 90s, but I still think the visuals that he presents are very stunning and unique, as previously mentioned. What I hope you guys get when watching this presentation is how unique of an artist he is. But again, there is this switch that he makes, and the artwork is still there, but the enhancements, again, subtle, I think showcase what you can do with this technology and what you're able to achieve with this artwork, even if you're an established artist or not. So these are the three Pixies albums that he was able to work on from the 2010s. They had a little hiatus, but they came back around that time. And I think with these images, while you still have that same style going on with the other artworks, for me, these images look a little more crisper. I think the color and enhancements are a little more obviously enhanced, and he had more control over these with the tools that he was using, as opposed to what he was working with originally. While those were unique, and these are also unique to his own style, I think with that control, he was able to sharpen things up and play around with color to his desire and to get that kind of image that he wants. And then in this slide, again, the quantity of work that he was putting out there tended to slow down a little bit more, but I think you can also just see this general enhancement and control of the art. So on the left we have a David Lynch album, yes, the famous director. What I like about this one, you can obviously see it's more of a digital thing, but I also like that the lighting thing that he was able to achieve and with the hand that's going on. You can also kind of see too with like the dice and stuff, he was able to have that control with these apps to achieve this kind of image, so I think that's pretty unique to his style. In the middle, I believe, I wasn't able to find what he used specifically for this, but obviously I think you could achieve this with a printing press, obviously, but I think with that image in the middle, you can obviously see some sort of digital creation going on here that looks just sharper and just a lot better as opposed to a printing press, which obviously might have some ink issues and stuff. And then on the right is also another album that obviously I think with a printing press would be hard to achieve. So you obviously have these kind of designs that you could achieve through this, but with the help of digital apps like Photoshop, Lightroom, and others, he was able to control the art that he was presenting. So that was my presentation on Vaughan Oliver. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up through Blackboard. Here are my references for the project, and I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy, and thanks for watching.